Hi.
Hi there. Welcome back to English for Specific Purposes at the B2 Plus level. We are your hosts. I'm Mr. Daryl.
And I'm Miss Tatia. მოგესალმებით. კეთილი იყოს თქვენი დაბრუნება ჩვენს ტელესკოლაში. მე თათია ვარ, სკიტერილია დღევანდელი გაკვეთილის თემა კი ფსიქოლოგია. Mr. Daryl, we are going to talk about psychology again, and I think that we are going to discuss very interesting topics connected with psychology. But I think that before we start the lesson, we need to look at our agenda. What's on our agenda today?
Well, we'll begin with that introduction you mentioned. We will go to the vocabulary list that will prepare us for the reading text, and from the reading text we'll look at our grammar section of the day, and we'll finish things up after that and give you some homework.
Very interesting. გაკვეთილს როგორც ყოველთვის მცირე შესავლით დავიწყებთ, შემდეგ ახალ სიტყვებს შევისწავლით, რომელიც ფსიქოლოგიასთან იქნება დაკავშირებული, წავიკითხავთ საინტერესო ტექსტს, ამას მოყვება გრამატიკა და გრამატიკული სავარჯიშოები, შემდეგ შევაჯამებთ გაკვეთილს და როგორც ყოველთვის დავასრულებთ საშინაო დავალებით. We can start, Mr. Daryl, right? And before we start, I would like to ask you, and I'm really interested to know, is it common in your country to consult with a psychologist to get help when you have some kind of psychological problems?
Yeah, it is kind of common. You do need a bit of money, of course. Nothing comes cheap. But a lot of people feel comfortable doing that. Like that's something that a lot of people will do.
Oh, really? That's very interesting.
Is it the same in this country?
No, unfortunately, no. Although nowadays people have started thinking about finding some psychologists and talking to them, but it's very rare. It's not. I wouldn't say it's common, but I think that it's really important because a lot of people have some psychological problems and they don't dare speak about it to someone,
or they don't have anyone to speak to.
They don't have to speak to anyone. No, there are psychologists, by the way. There are a lot of psychologists in Georgia, but it's not common for them. I think that people cannot overcome this fear of sharing their problems with others. And I hope that people will start going to psychologists and just talking about their problems and solving the problems with the professionals, not trying to struggle with them all the time.
By yourself.
By yourself. Okay, now let's move on and let's look at some adjectives and nouns related to the states of psychological states, maybe. And the first word we have is anxiety. Anxiety is a noun and in Georgian it means shpoti gelwareba. How would you define that word, Mr. Daryl?
Anxiety, it's an uncomfortable feeling or worry about something that is happening or that might happen in the future.
Okay. Anxiety, noun, and in Georgian it means shpoti gelwareba. And a very good example, children normally feel a bit of anxiety about their first day at school. So yeah, I remember my first day at school, I really felt a lot of anxiety.
Sometimes people cry as well.
Yeah, and the next word we have is angst. Angst is a noun, and in Georgia it means shishi shpoti. What is the definition of this word?
Angst, it's a strong worry and unhappiness, especially about personal problems.
Okay. Angst, a noun, and in Georgian it is shishi shpoti. And we have a very good example here. All my children went through a period of late adolescent angst.
Teenage angst.
Yes. Okay, and what is the next word we have, Mr.
Obsession. Obsession, it's a noun, and it means the control of one's thoughts by a continuous, powerful idea or feeling, or the idea or feeling itself.
Obsession is a noun, and in Georgian it means აკრიატებული აზრი, idea. For example, don't let this interest of yours become an obsession.
That happens to people sometimes.
Very often. Okay, and the next word we have is
restlessness. Restlessness. And the definition of restlessness is the quality of being unwilling or unable to stay still, to be quiet or calm, Because you are worried or bored.
So restlessness is a noun, and in Georgian it means shpotva mousvenroba. For example, side effects can include restlessness and irritability.
To uncomfortable side effects.
Yeah, really. And the next word we have is
exhilaration. Exhilaration, and the definition is it's a kind of a big feeling of excitement and happiness.
Exhilaration is a noun, and in Georgian it means khiaruleba. And we have a very good example here. Her mood could swing rapidly from gloom to exhilaration. So she changed her mood very easily, right?
There's a term for that. I think they're called manic depressives.
Oh, really? Okay, and the next word we have is
radiance. Radiance.
Radiance.
It's a nice word. It's happiness, beauty, or good health that you can see in someone's face.
Great. So radiance is a noun, and in Georgian it means ptqinvaleba. He was struck by the radiance of her smile. It's so nice to see the radiance in somebody's face, okay?
Especially when they smile.
Yeah, and it's sometimes infectious, right? You also become just happy when you see radiance in somebody's face.
Correct.
Now it's time to practice, Mr. Daryl. We will see some sentences on the screen, and we have to fill the gaps with the proper words, okay? So here is the first statement. The boy's mysterious disappearance has caused, then there is a gap, and guilt for the family. What can the mysterious disappearance of a boy cause?
Well, it's got to be a strong, uncomfortable feeling, and there's only really one word that encompasses that, and that is angst.
And you're right, Mr. Daryl. So the sentence reads this way. The boy's mysterious disappearance has caused angst and guilt for the family.
Well, Ms. Tatya,
I'm ready.
Your turn. Her fear of flying is bordering on...
I think it's the right word here might be obsession. So, and the sentence would read this way. Her fear of flying is bordering on obsession.
That means she just thinks about it non-stop and she always worries about it.
And it's almost an obsession, right?
Almost going to phobia.
To phobia, right? Okay. And now for you, he has exhibited symptoms of, then there is a gap, and overwhelming worry. What do you think can go in the gap?
It's got to be the other A word. He's exhibited symptoms of anxiety and overwhelming worry.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the next one for me, and I'm ready.
Eventually, I resolved to overcome my, and you need something here, and settle myself for the night.
Let me think. I think the best word here would be restlessness. And the sentence would sound this way. Eventually, I resolved to overcome my restlessness and settle myself for the night. Okay, and the next one for you, Mr. Daryl. She was filled with something when she first saw her newborn baby. So when you see your newborn baby, you might be filled with only
exhilaration.
And you're right, Mr. Daryl. The sentence sounds this way. She was filled with exhilaration when she first saw her newborn baby.
Oh, well, why don't you read the final sentence, Ms. Tatya?
Yes, of course, I'm ready. There is a warmth and a radiance about her. Her movements are measured and self-assured. And I think that we have done with the first set of vocabulary. It's time for reading, but as always, we have to learn some words in order to understand the text better. So let's look at our second set of vocabulary, and the first word we have is affluent. Affluent is an adjective, and in Georgian it means didari, sheedzlebuli. So what are the synonyms of affluent, Mr. Daryl?
Rich, well off, wealthy.
So many words.
There are a lot of words. I wonder if that tells us something about society. Affluent means having a lot of money or owning a lot of things.
Okay, so affluent is an adjective, and in Georgian it means didari. And we have a good example here. We live in an affluent neighborhood. It means that everybody around us is wealthy, right? And well off. And what is the next word, Mr. Daryl?
Paramount. Paramount is the next word. It's an adjective, and the definition of paramount is something more important than anything else. So the most important thing.
Okay. paramount. It's an adjective, as Mr. Daryl said, and in Georgian it means umnishnelovanesi, paramount. And we have a very good example here. Everybody agrees that education is the paramount issue, and I also among those people who believe that education is a paramount.
What about
issue.
Health?
Oh, health is also, of course. Okay, now let's move on, and the next word we have is
Prescription.
Prescription is a noun, and in Georgian it means recepti. Ekimis mier გამოწერილი recepti. Okay, how would you define that word, Mr. Daryl?
A prescription is a piece of paper written by a doctor where the details of the medicine or drugs that someone needs are written.
Prescription, it's a noun, and in Georgian it means recepti. And we have a very good example here. The drugs are only available by prescription. Now let's move on. The next word we have is
A verb, to tackle. To tackle. Now, to tackle is to try and deal with someone or some problem or something. You know, use some effort to deal with the situation.
okay, and tackle is mostly used with problems. So
Yeah.
we can tackle problems. It means that we can deal with problems, right? So tackle is a verb, and in Georgian it means საქმისთვის, პრობლემისთვის, ხელის მოკიდება, თავის გართმევა, მოგვარება, okay? And a very good example here, there are many ways of tackling this problem. And the next word
Is
is
a noun, and it is obstacle. Obstacle. Now, the definition of obstacle is something that blocks you so that you can't really achieve a goal that you want, something that's stopping you from achieving a goal or aim that you have.
okay, obstacle. It's a noun, and in Georgian it means დაბრკოლება. And a very good example here, money seems to be no obstacle. So
That
it
means they have a lot of money.
Yeah. Okay, and I think that we have finished with the words, and it's time for the reading. But before we read the text, let's discuss some questions. So what do you think, Mr. Jerry? What are the key factors that make people happy? So what can make you happy personally?
Well, having money enough to do the things that I want to do, maybe travel, maybe buy a nice car, or that kind of thing. You know, to have what you want and to be able to do the things you want.
Yeah, you're right. So I think that's just apart from some material things, people also need friends around them,
Friendship.
and family around them, and
Love.
normal work-life balance. And there are a lot of things apart from material things that make people happy, right?
Although a good burger or something makes me happy quite a bit as well.
Really? Okay, and one more question I'm really interested to know is whether is the level of happiness higher in the developed countries or not? We can compare Georgia with Canada. So do you think that people in developed countries feel happier?
Well, I think it's a difficult, maybe dangerous thing to say definitively. We don't know for sure how people feel in different areas. Does money make you happier? I mean, some people say yes, some people say no.
Yes, that's why we are going to read the text and find out whether the development of the country and being rich makes people happy or not.
Good question.
Okay. For the last 50 years, the world's richest countries have grown wealthier and wealthier. Average salaries have more than doubled, but although we are much more affluent, it seems that we are not necessarily any happier than we were before. A new survey published by the World Database of Happiness gives statistical information in the form of league tables about people's perceptions of their own happiness in different countries around the world. By and large, there is usually a correlation between a nation's wealth and the happiness of its people, but money is not the only deciding factor. The Colombians and Mexicans, for example, are much happier than the populations of many European countries that are much richer than them. Among the richer nations, some like the Danes and the Swiss are much happier than others, like the Greeks or the Belgians, but in almost all of these countries that are getting richer and richer, people are no more satisfied with their lives now than they were 2 generations ago.
For politicians, understanding what it is that makes us happy is crucial. The statistical information in the World Database of Happiness is a useful starting point, and the new science of positive psychology, the science of happiness, is also helping our leaders decide how best to shape the future of our countries. What is clear from the research is that financial security is only important up to a certain point. After that, the most important factors are health, our families, and a sense of belonging to a community. The danger for societies where material possessions and work are of paramount importance is that the other factors that contribute to happiness suffer. In Britain, for example, stress-related illnesses are a major problem, and 13 million prescriptions for antidepressants are written every year. At the same time, family values and a sense of community disappear.
Unable to find happiness at home, it's not surprising that many people look to find it elsewhere. The advertisements of national tourist boards on TV and in glossy magazines show pictures of happy, smiling faces, pretty resorts, and euphoric carnivals. Cheap travel has made it possible for most people in rich countries to buy a week or two of happiness each year. But it is only a very temporary solution. Returning to our jobs and our worries after a fortnight in the sun, our lack of happiness may be felt even more acutely. Happiness, after all, is relative. In an attempt to tackle the happiness problem, world leaders at the recent World Economic Forum in Davos took part in a workshop which explored the meaning of happiness. Various factors were discussed, and there were contributions from business leaders, university professors, and pop singers. Unfortunately, the workshop failed to reach any practical conclusions. They did, however, agree on one thing. Although governments will find it very difficult, if not impossible, to create happiness, they can remove some of the obstacles that stand in its way. But even if they haven't found the key to true happiness, there were plenty of smiling faces at the end of the day. It seems that the participants had all enjoyed taking part in the search.
Wow.
Okay, I think that we can just find out that being rich does not necessarily mean being happy, right? Okay, I think that we can start practicing, and we can find out how well we remember the text and how well we have understood the text. So we will see the statements on the screen, and we are going to decide if they are true or false. So I'm ready to try.
Here's your first sentence. As people become richer, they are more satisfied with their lives.
This is definitely false, because I have just talked about it. And I remember we read, although we are much more affluent, it seems that we are not necessarily any happier than we were before. And the next statement for you, Mr. Darrell. In wealthy countries, most important factors for happiness after reaching certain financial security are family, health, and the sense of belonging. What do you think? Is it true or false, Mr. Darrell?
I think according to the text, as well as according to you with the discussion we had earlier, I think this sentence is true.
And you're right, Mr. Darrell.
And the appropriate sentence from the text is as follows. What is clear from the research is that financial security is only important up to a certain point. After that, the most important factors are health, our families, and a sense of belonging to a community.
That's great, you're right. And the next one for me, I'm ready.
Britain has an excessive number of people who take antidepressants.
Let me think. I think that this statement is true, because I remember we read, in Britain, for example, stress-related illnesses are a major problem, and 13 million prescriptions for antidepressants are written every year. At the same time, family values and a sense of community disappear. And the last one for you, Mr. Darrell. Traveling is the best solution to fight against depression. What do you think? Is it true or false?
Some people might say yes, but I think according to the text, it's false.
It's a temporary solution, I think, right?
Like fast food or something. Here's the part of the text that says, proves it false. Cheap travel has made it possible for most people in rich countries to buy a week or two of happiness each year, but it is only a very temporary solution, as you said.
Yes, I remember it quite well. And I think it's time to move on to grammar. And the topic of today's grammar is reported speech, okay? Now, when do we use reported speech? If someone says something and you want to tell another person, you can report it using direct or reported speech, right? You can either say the exact words someone said, or just you can report it, right? In direct speech, we use a speech or quotation marks to show the exact words the person said. For example, I feel furious. We can also use a reporting verb to show who was speaking. And we can say, he says, I am furious. Or, she tells me I never get upset. These are the exact words somebody said, okay?
Yeah, but you know what? It's not the most fluent thing to do. And that's why reported speech is something you should learn.
Common.
Now, say and tell are both reporting verbs. We use tell when we say who we are speaking to. Here's the correct form. She tells me she loves walking in the fresh air. The speaker is talking to me. Here's the correct form for says. She says she loves walking in the fresh air. We don't know who the speaker is talking to, and it's not necessary to mention who. Here's the wrong way to use that verb. She says me she loves walking in the fresh air. We don't use me with say, and I've seen this mistake happen a few times before with students. Here's the correct way. She said to me, she loves walking.
If the reporting verb is in the past tense, so certain changes must be made. We usually change the present form to a past form in the reported speech. For example, he is tired, he said. Now, when we report it, we should say, he said he was tired. She told me I love walking. Or she told me she loved walking. We change the pronoun when the speaker or listener changes. For example, a boy tells his mother, I am nervous. Later, the boy's mother tells the father, he said he was nervous. Of course, the pronoun changes. We can use that, but we can also miss it out, and the meaning is the same. He said that he was nervous, or he said he was nervous. Or she told me that she loved nature, or she told me she loved nature.
To bring up what you just said in more detail, here are the forms. Now, in reported speech, we usually move the direct speech verb one step back into the past. So from present simple, we would turn it into past simple. Here's the example. I know you. It becomes, she said she knew him. Now, present continuous turns into the past continuous. I am having coffee becomes, he said he was having coffee. Present perfect becomes past perfect. I have finished my homework. It becomes, he said he had finished his homework. Now, the present perfect continuous becomes the past perfect continuous. I have been studying Chinese becomes, she said she had been studying Chinese. Now, is going to becomes was going to. I am going to go home becomes, she said she was going to go home. And finally, the future simple becomes would. I will go to the bank later. Becomes, he said he would go to the bank later.
Okay, very interesting. And now some more important things. A reported statement in the past simple often says the same. For example, I drove to work, she said she drove to work. Second, and you cannot go further back in the time than the past perfect. So it says the same too. For example, I had driven to work. She said that she had driven to work. As you can see, we do not make any changes because it cannot go any further. Modal verbs, some change in reported speech. For example, I can or I can't speak Turkish. She said that she could or could not speak Turkish. Or I must or must not wash my hair. She said she had to or didn't have to wash her hair. So as you can see, so we changed must into had to, right? Then fourth, some modal verbs don't change. I could take the bus. He said he could take the bus. Or I should go to bed. She said she should go to bed. And I might watch TV. He said he might watch TV. As you can see, we have not changed could, should, or might. We don't change the verb in reported speech if this situation has not changed. For example, if it's a fact or is general truth. For example, I love you. She told me she loves me. So this has not changed. The situation is the same. And the sixth one, but we can't use the past tense to show you are not certain the other person loves him or her. For example, the other person was not telling the truth. I love you, she said she loved me. Okay, in this case, the person is not sure about whether it's true or not, right? And I think that we have finished with the instructions about grammar, and it's time to practice, which is also very fun part of the lesson. We will see some direct sentences, and we have to change them into reported speech, right? So I will read the sentence for you, and can you try to turn them into reported?
I will.
Okay. I was waiting for the bus when he arrived.
Now, if I'm going to
Don't forget to change the tense.
Yeah, you're right. So I would say this. She told me that she had been waiting for the bus when he arrived.
And you're right, Mr. Daryl. And the next one, you should go to bed early. As you can see here, we have a modal verb. This is the modal verb, which does not change the form, as I remember.
And in that case, it should say, she told me I should go to bed early.
And you're right, Mr. Daryl. And it's time for me now.
Here's your sentence. I'll do the washing up later.
She told me she would do the washing up later, because I remember we said that with future simple changes into would. Okay? Nice. And the final one for you, she's living in Paris for a few months. How would you report this sentence?
She said that she was living in Paris for a few months.
Oh, very nice. Absolutely right, Mr. Daryl. And I think that we have finished with the exercise too and with the lesson, and it's time for homework. I really wonder what the homework is today.
The homework is the following question. Write about the things that make you happy. Very positive question.
Okay, very positive, and a lot of interesting ideas might come. Okay, but where the homework can be uploaded, Mr. Daryl?
It can be uploaded to the address you see on the screen right now.
And the sample is also provided there.
Yes, definitely. If you need help to work up your answer, the sample is there.
Okay, very nice. So I think that the only thing we can do is to say goodbye and wait for the next lesson. So stay with us and keep on learning.
Until the next time, goodbye.
Bye.